Well, hello everyone. If you can hear me, let me know in the chat to see if the sound is okay, if I sound all right. If I need to adjust anything, just let me know. Why, thank you, Mary. How are you today? Had to bake something. Nice. Morning, Julie. How are you this morning? Made fish. I think I would have done a cake or something sweet. I got my morning throat. Hello, Darren. How are you this morning? Keto. Yeah, I am too. I probably would have made a cake anyway. I like keto. That's kind of cool. Sun is shining in Victoria, BC. It is gray and overcast here in Akron, Ohio. Fish cakes. Nice. We got a couple minutes before we start here. I like to jump on a little early for anybody who hasn't been here before. I think everybody's been here before, though. I think. Oh, I like Evertone better. My first comment on this thread was a complete typo as well. So it's just the way it is. 2 minutes. Good morning, Sherry Mills. How are you? Getting my hits of coffee in. Some people do steps. I do sips of coffee. They should make a watch for that. Good another day. Great today. No matter what it's like outside, that's the way I am. Got 9 of us on here so far, but we're going to start here in 10 minutes, 15 seconds or so. Welcome to the Live Loving live stream with John Davis. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Loving live stream. Old Jenny Brown's in the house, but she can't stay the full hour, so I guess it's going to be a short one today. I'm kidding. I hope everybody's doing really well. I got a funny story for you. My son graduated high school this year, and as soon as high school was over, he instantly changed his sleep pattern. He now is like up all night and sleeping during the day. And Mary, these are. I actually went to the grocery store the other day, and somehow in going to the grocery store, I lost my glasses. This is an old pair of glasses. I kind of like them though. It's just kind of nice. I can probably see more of my eyes with them. So my son changed his sleeping pattern. Now, my house is kind of interesting because I taught my son at a very young age how to crack whips and swing nunchucks and play with swords and do all that stuff. And last week I came down from upstairs and I sat down in my living room. I had my cup of coffee. I was just kind of doing my morning routine with my laptop and checking emails, and I kept hearing a weird little noise, and I kept looking around trying to find this noise. And I got up and I walked around, couldn't find the noise. And then I walked by my back door, and my back door was wide open. Not only the main door, but the screen door as well, wide open. And I'm like, ooh. And then I heard another noise. And right around the corner, I saw a squirrel in my house. And I turned to try to scare it back out the door, and it took off running into my house. And I chased it around for a while. And finally, I woke my son up from bed, and I said, get down here. You're going to help me get this squirrel that you let into the house overnight, right? And so he comes down, wrapped in a blanket because he was sound asleep. And we're trying to find this squirrel. We're chasing this squirrel around my house. We lost him. Couldn't find him. So I went over to the other door, and I opened the front door where I thought he was near, and I kind of like went back and made some noise, trying to get him to scare out the front door. Don't know if he left or not, and couldn't see him, couldn't hear him, so we just closed everything back up. And I figured, well, if eventually I'll see him if he's still in the house, or he got out, which is great. So I'm sitting there, and I didn't see or hear from him the rest of the night. So next morning I'm sitting there in my living room, and I hear a noise, and I look over, and the squirrel runs by. I mean, literally right by me. And I get up and I chase him, try to get him out the door and a whole bit. So I end up getting one of these have a heart squirrel traps where you can catch them alive and take them somewhere else away from your house and release them. And so I got the have a heart, and I put it in right by my back door, which is where the squirrel came in. I figured if that's probably the way he knows to come in. So I put it by the back door. And then as the day goes on, he's jumping around. I hear this noise, and he's jumping against the screen, not into the trap. So I try to get him. He disappears again. So I just leave it set up, and I come into the front room, and I'm doing my work, and I hear the trap go off, and I go off, and I open up the trap, and the trap went off, but he wasn't in it. He got out. So here I am. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to reset the trap, and then I reset the trap. I've got the big door open, the screen door still closed, the trap is there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching television, and I hear a noise, and I turn around, and he's on the screen. So I come over, and I'm like, okay, now the trap is between the main door and the screen door, and I can't get I can't get him to go into the trap. And if I could close the big door, I could trap him between the big door and the screen door, and I could go outside and open the screen door and just let him out. But because the trap was there, I couldn't close the big door. So I'm there, and I'm looking at him, and as I step closer, he goes down lower, so he's getting ready to run. I back up, he climbs back up. So now he's climbing up and down the screen. Finally, I go to make a move to move the trap. He takes off running, disappears from my house again. So I pull the trap out and I reset it so that the doors are now just a gap open so he can come around, climb in. And I set the trap up in the pathway that he would come, figuring he'd come there and he'd find that spot. And finally, and I set the doors so that they're barely open. I figure what I'm going to do is I'm going to just see him in there, and I'm going to close the big door real fast because now it's really close. So I'm sitting there and I hear noise. I look over, and he had come out of one of the front rooms, and he was in my dining room. I've got skylights, and the skylights create a sunspot on the floor. And the squirrel comes out and lays down and sunbathes in the sunspot. So I'm sitting there looking at him. He's looking at me, and I'm looking at it, right? So I ignore him because I know that every time I move, he runs back into the house. So I watch him sneak down the wall. I watch him come to the trap, and he walks completely around the trap. He gets all the way over, gets in between the two doors. I get over there, and I'm there. He can't see me because I'm hidden, and I have a wooden cane that I used to use for acting with a big rubber tip on it. I'm just going to use this cane and push that door closed real fast. So I jump up, I push the door closed real fast, and I swear to you, this squirrel came through the crack between the door and the wall. Suddenly, it was right there in front of me. He jumped down and took off running down my front hall. Now, I had closed all my other doors in the front hall, so my front hall was a dead end for him. So he runs down. Now he's in a dead end. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me. We're staring at each other like two gunfighters in the street. And every time I move, he moves. He looks at me. He's looking at me. He's looking at me. Finally, I just open up the big door, and I open up the screen door, and I step to one side, and I make a big noise. And he takes a long, hard, fast run straight at that open door. 5 feet from it, he leaps in the air like Steve McQueen jumping the motorcycle in The Great Escape. And just right out, bam, hit the back porch, took off running. And that's how I got a squirrel out of my house after 2 days of him hanging out and sunbathing in my dining room. So that's my squirrel story, and it's an honest to God true one, and it made me chuckle for the longest of time. They are very clever, very, very clever. And this guy, he saw that trap the second time. He's like, yeah, last time I went in there, I almost didn't get out, so he was there. So, guys, I do a lot of private sessions, as you know, and for anybody who hasn't noticed, when I hit 5,000 subscribers, I'm giving 5 of them free away. And you have to, if you're interested in that, you've got to go find that video that says 5 free videos at 5,000 and put a comment on that video. And that's where I'm going to draw the names from, the comments in that video. And but as I'm doing these private sessions, there seems to be a predominant underlying belief that I'm running into on a regular basis. And that belief is that struggle equals growth. That struggle equals growth. And people tell me, well, yeah, you struggle, and they tell the story of the butterfly, was a caterpillar and had to fight his way out of the cocoon, and it was the fighting his way out of the cocoon that made make his wings grow strong enough to fly. And I'm like, well, how do you know? How do you know that butterfly in that cocoon wasn't just saying, ooh, I like to pick stuff off the wall? Because what the struggle is a perception. The struggle is a choice. I've done things that make my muscles sore that I just loved doing. I have done things that like sword fighting and doing stunt work. I've walked away sore and tired, but I loved every minute of it. It wasn't a struggle at all. Struggle is an emotional strain. Struggle is a belief. Struggle is something that we work our way through. But the reality of it is it literally is a chosen perception. It's a chosen idea. We choose to struggle. And if you think about it, I am struggling. God's going to give you struggling because that's what the promise was. Whatever you ask in God's name is granted. How about choosing it to be fun and easy? How about choosing it to be something you enjoy doing? How about choosing to say, oh, look, I might not, this thing that I'm doing right now isn't technically the most fun thing, but look at the cool thing it's getting me at the end. I'm doing this because of that. And focus on the positive aspects. The idea of walking through life believing that you have to struggle, to me, is one of the harshest cruelties that we each can inflict upon ourselves. Because our choice, our belief is our creation. And our environment, everything we experience in our environment is a choice of some kind. Now, that sounds really strange, but it's a choice about how we perceive things. If I perceive life as a struggle, then I'm going to create more and more struggle. If I perceive that I am an amazing person who abundantly thrives and is resilient no matter what comes, that's a different belief. That's a different feeling, right? And there is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. That's what Shakespeare said. And it's true. There is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. And, you can do good things and still have sore muscles. You can do good things and still come out the other side going, wow, that was a lot. You can do things that you're looking at going, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. But man, I'm tired. Man, that was hard. It can be hard, but it doesn't have to be a struggle, the emotional struggle. I can go out here. I had my lawnmower broke down, and I was like, well, I think I'm going to swap motors. Never done that before. I could struggle through it. I just said this would be a cool learning experience, and I just started doing some YouTube research and found how easy it was to swap one motor from one to the other, and I just did it. That's the point of this whole thing, is that I could have said, this is going to be hard, this is going to be a struggle, and then I would have had a hard time and struggled with it. We have to start looking at our outer experience and the way we work our way through life as a choice, and choosing to come through things well or joyfully, even when things seem difficult. And I say seem difficult because everything you're experiencing is an illusion of your belief anyway. So if it seems difficult, then you can work on that too. You can fix that as well. But the idea that life is struggle, or you have to struggle to grow, how about I grow easily? And if you stick to that kind of mindset, you're going to find a huge, huge change in your life. You'll be much more joyful, much more happy, and you'll realize that you are the creator of your experience, and you can create struggle just as equally as you can create joy and love. And so, as they say in the Indiana Jones movie, choose wisely. So, I hope you guys are having a great Sunday. Let's just dive into a conversation. I also wanted to let you know, and I know, Jenny, you're going to miss this, I'm sure, but we're going to do our normal session today. But at the end, if anybody's interested in doing a meditation afterwards, I decided to break it out to make it separate so we have more time for questions and answers. I will leave myself open, and I will do a meditation if anyone is interested. It can, but it doesn't have to. Mary, what are you talking about? Struggling? I don't necessarily understand what that means. I'm going to take a sip of coffee real quick. Struggle and grow. You mean struggle can equal growth? If that's your belief, then you will struggle. That's my take on that. But if you believe struggle equals growth, that means you're gonna experience growth through struggle. You don't have to struggle. Exactly right. Exactly right. Struggle. I like struggle. So guys, what questions can I answer for you? What topics would you like me to discuss today, or would you like to discuss with me? Also, for anybody who wants to get in on a really unique conversation, in the membership area on Monday nights, we have a small group that gets together on Zoom face-to-face, and we talk about all kinds of cool spiritual topics. It's in the membership area, but so you'd have to sign up for the membership. But we get on there every Monday night, and we just talk about the coolest things, and you'll see Jenny Brown face-to-face. So what questions can I answer? If you want, I can get us started with a different one. Oh, by the way, I am actually working on the Jeshua and Mariam Ishti Mariam painting, so that will be coming at some point. You'll get a chance to see what they look like together. Yeah, I love our Monday conversations too, Jenny. I think. Things we struggle with is up to us to create to ease the struggle. John, comment if you want. And hi, all. Hello, Sherry Mills. Things we struggle with. Is this a question? I'm not sure. I mean, that's what I just spoke about. So I'm assuming you're just commenting on what you spoke about. So, okay, I'm going to jump over to something else. Oh, no, it was for Mary. Okay, so let me jump over to something else. I asked in our group, and this kind of ties into the struggle conversation. I asked in our group a couple Mondays ago if suffering is a necessary part of the human condition, and if we never suffered, what would we be like? You know, the idea that suffering being a necessary part, and I want to talk about that because of the fact that I'm a firm believer that we're here to experience our fears and our anxieties and our illusion of separation from the love of God and love in general. And I think that by coming here and experiencing it from all angles, we get to know what love is more fully because we now see it from all angles. And so I don't necessarily believe we're not here for that suffering is necessary, because, as I said, suffering itself is a choice. Now, in Buddhism, they say life is suffering, but as I've said before, the translation is off, because the actual translation, when you translate it from Pali, the original language, is life is suffering because of our habitual responses to our subconscious belief. And that's the coolest thing, is that you can change your subconscious belief just by changing your beliefs in your present moment. And the more you change your beliefs in the present moment, the more you change your outcome. And Mary says, sometimes if you won't listen to the lessons that are easy, you might get growth the hard way. If you don't listen to, well, it's an interesting statement, because let me think about that for a second. If you won't listen to the lessons that are easy, you might get growth the hard way. So who are you listening to? If you're the creator of your experience, who are you listening to? If you're listening, let me put it this way: if you believe struggle equals growth, you won't see the lessons that are easy. You'll see the ones that make you struggle, and you have to start with believing that you can have your growth easily before you'll see it or even hear it, if that is what you're asking. But if you're not willing to see it or listen or hear it, you will get it the hard way. You'll go through hard things until you change your belief and come to your outcome and your understanding. And that's when it's really interesting when you talk to people who are getting up in advanced years, and that you ask them, what would you have done differently? It's never the first thing they say is, I would have done this because I would have been happier the whole life. They say things that would have made them more joyful, more with more ease. To give you a really funny story, my my grandmother, we called her Nana, and Nana was born in 1903, the day the Wright brothers first flew. And when she was 92 years old, I overheard her talking to my sister, and she said to my sister, quite literally, "You're not waiting until you get married, are you?" And my sister laughed and said, "No." She said, "Good. It's much more fun the way you're doing it." So that to me is the point. As people get older and they start to realize they could have done things easier, they didn't have to struggle as much. And what I'm saying is, take the advice. Do it now. Start enjoying your life now. So at the end of your life, you can go, wow, I lived my life well. I lived my life in really cool ways. I've done really cool things. I've experienced so much. And that's huge. That's huge. I never lived a conventional life. Everyone wanted me to become an architect or work in the corporate world forever and all that stuff. But when I left college, which I went to college for architecture to please my mom, I left college. I never became an architect. I went off and I did comedy sword fighting shows all over the world. I was traveling and experiencing the world in different ways. And that comedy sword fighting show took me across overseas to a total of 30 countries. And every time I did the things that made me joyful and made me excited, I was rewarded for doing it because I was having fun. I was enjoying my experience. And the more I enjoyed my experience, the more opportunities to enjoy my experience were presented to me. That's the key. More of that, please. More cool things, please. Thank you, God, for the world travel I'm experiencing. Hey, you want to do USO tours? Yeah, absolutely I do. I'm there. Be available to say yes to the easiness or to the fun things. I often find people who I'm working with in private sessions who are like, well, I'm retiring now and I don't know what my purpose is and I'm going off into this direction and I don't know how to do it and I'm trying to figure out what that looks like and blah, 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 blah. Right? And I'm going, stop asking how. Stop trying to figure out what it looks like. Start doing things you like and love to do, and the money will come. People who retire, they have a retirement, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with the rest of their life. The reason they think that way is because they have defined themselves by their job their entire life. And now their job is ending. They didn't know how to define themselves anymore because they've defined themselves for so long in that career. And the cool thing about not living that way is you get to experience so much more. People ask me, well, what did you do for a living? And I say, well, I was a landscaper. I was a landscape designer. I was a Renaissance Festival performer. I was a stage act at a Renaissance Festival. I was an artistic director of theme parks. I had a real estate company. I was a college professor. I was a corporate speaker. I was a spiritual speaker. And now I'm back to doing spiritual work again. I just followed my heart, and my life has seemed. There were times in my life that the things weren't going the way I wanted them to. But the interesting thing about that, even in those moments, it was because I wasn't being my authentic self when those things happened. So my point is really live joyfully and happily now in the present moment, in the God moment, in the I am moment. Don't live in the I will be moment, because then you're never experiencing it. Because the future is just a place where you set goals for your next present moment. But if you're not living it in your present moment, you're not experiencing it. You're putting it off, and you're placing it off. And stay in the here and now and live in the I am moment. God's name is I am, according to Moses. I am joyful. I am loving. I am living. I am experiencing. I am traveling. I am joyfully loving. I am joyfully experiencing my family. I am joyfully having a great time at the beach. I am. Live in the I am joyful. I am loving. I am caring. And God will give you those things. God will give you those things, because that is the key. That was the promise. Whatever you ask for in God's name is granted if you have faith. Belief. You have to believe it's going to happen. You have to believe that God gives you what you ask for. And when you start to believe that God gives you joyful happiness, then God will give you joyful happiness. And, God, consciousness, yada, yada, whatever you call it. I call it God, because mom was Catholic, and that was the way we did things. But that essence of love is God. God is love. Right there in the book of John. It says it right there. God is love. Be love. That's why he was called John the Beloved. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just think it's funny. But the idea is you are your experience is you, and you are your experience. So you need to be your experience before you experience it, and be it as Gandhi said. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. Be the joy. Be the love. Book Regrets of the Dying. I will look into that book, Mary. That looks like a perfect book for me to read. So what other questions can I answer for you guys? I was off on a little rant there for a second. Anybody else a coffee drinker like me? Interesting. Here's mornings, yes. Absolutely. So how do you guys define success? Just in the chat board over here, give me your definition of success. Let me know what you think success is. Vladimir, this is a great question, and I hope that my answer will satisfy you. It might not, but what do you think about the concept that self-love is one of the reasons people go to hell? Swedenborg says that loving yourself more than God or others is a sign of restricted growth. During youth, we're meant to be inward focused, but as we grow and gain experience, we're meant to share love hourly. First of all, I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in hell at all. As a matter of fact, hell in the original text of the Bible was translated from the word Gehenna. Gehenna on the outskirts of Jerusalem was the place where they burned trash. So all the stuff that went bad went and burned in Gehenna. And it wasn't until the 1300s, the Middle Ages, when Dante wrote his Inferno, when hell became the hell that the Christians have grabbed a hold of as truth. But it does not exist in any of the ancient text in the form that religious people tend to push it on us now. As far as self-love, I disagree with the whole premise of this because it's an absolute. Self-love, you are to love yourself equally. You're supposed to love yourself and others because you are all one with God. And if you're not loving one aspect of self, you will diminish. You know, the word ego means to be self-aware. And when people hear the word ego, they think that they're talking about a big ego is what they actually think they're talking about. But the reality of it is what they're talking about is an ego out of balance. And what you're talking about is an ego out of balance, an ego that is geared towards loving themselves and to the exclusion of others. That's narcissism, and that's not equally loving. You have to love yourself as equally as you love others. And sometimes people will go the other way and be so completely selfless that they get taken advantage of. You have to love yourself enough to realize you have to have boundaries and borders as well. You have to say, okay, I'm not going to allow someone to take advantage of me, because narcissists will take advantage of people who are selfless, because that's what they do. And so to be fully in balance with you and who you are in self, and to be your authentic self, and to love yourself, is to be in balance, saying, no, I love you as equally as I love myself. And no, what does that sound like? Sounds a lot like the idea of treat the golden rule. Treat others as you would want them to treat you, right? That's the key. And oftentimes I've said one of the most loving things you can do is be a consequence. You know, be the person who has to let them know that they're not in a good space, not in a loving space. I can't tell you how many people in my life I've said, well, that wasn't very loving, or I've said, ooh, that's really harsh. I've also had people who have said, I'm not your friend anymore because I'm not supporting this sort of relationship where I'm being taken from and you're just taking. So that, give people the benefit of the doubt and love yourself enough to realize when they're abusing you as well. The other thing about this question here, Vladimir, is that it's very much based in modern Christianity and modern and organized religious belief. And somebody said to me the other day, I noticed that you quote scripture. It might have even been you, Vladimir. I noticed that you quote scripture and is there truth in the Bible? But if you notice, I quote the scripture, I quote the Bhagavad Gita, I quote the Vakanamrut, I quote the Quran, I quote the writings of the Baha'i, I quote Shakespeare, I quote Wayne Dyer, I quote Gandhi, I quote Buddha, I quote everything. God is too big to be encompassed by one religion or one religious thought. In my Father's house, there are many mansions. There are many ways to the source. But it comes down to the idea that in looking and seeking to find a true God or a true loving consciousness that we would define as God, you have to realize that it's everywhere in your life. And more so, it's in your life. You have to choose it the way that it is. Wow, I'm on disability right now because of MS. And I want you to look at that statement and realize that I'm is a contraction for I am. There you go. If there's one thing I struggle with, it's watching other people be unloving to other people. This is a great, you are quite welcome, Vladimir. This is a great question, great comment, Jenny. If there's one thing I struggle with, it's watching other people be unloving to other people. I had a comment the other day on one of the videos from Nina, our friend Nina. And she was like, she was talking about the new book by Neil Donald Walsh called The God Solution. She's like, the quote that she put out there was that she had a hard time understanding the quote where he says, when people do bad things, it's understandable. And she had a real issue with understandable. And she's like, I just can't get that. Well, why? How can doing bad things be understandable? And it wasn't until I said to her, I said, understandable does not mean excused, accepted, or that it's right. It just means you understand why. It just means you understand why they're doing it. And if, in Nina's case, she was saying being cruel to animals. Well, if you're deeply narcissistic, that cruelty is to serve and pleasure yourself. So it's the fear of not having power and taking power over something else. So it's understandable why that would happen, because this person is mistaking power for love, and they're loving themselves over all others. So, Jenny? What did you think of the God Solution? I loved it. I thought it was great, guys. If you're interested, that's a really good book. And what's sad, Marvita? I loved it. I thought it was a great book. And for anybody who knows, in June, Neil Donald Walsh will be interviewed on Spirit Cafe podcast with Tamara and I. We're both very giggly about that whole prospect, so it's going to be fun. Animals cruelty. Yeah, you loved it. Good, Jenny. Doesn't it really sound like I wrote that book? He was saying things that I say all the time. I loved it. Oh, cool. Great. Neil's interview is great. His God Solution to me, nice, simple read, or Audible, if you listen to it on Audible like I did, and I think Jenny did too. It's a it sounds like it's exactly what I talk about almost every day. Is that being, perfect love, pure love is what I think he calls it. Um, but if you look at the idea, if you look at the idea of the quote from the book of John, no fear can exist in perfect love. It's basically very much what he says. It does sound like our Monday conversations in the membership group. You're right, Jenny. We have those. We get off onto some really deep topics on those conversations on Mondays, and it's kind of nice seeing each other face to face, and getting the facial reactions and my favorite part about our Monday sessions is how much we laugh. Though we laugh a lot, and to me it's such a joyful night to hang out. Um, Mondays are just been wonderful. Um, so Neil Donald Walsh, how many of you here found his first book, Conversations with God, to be influential in your personal journey? Ah, well, thank you, Marvita. That's lovely. Thank you so much. Um, what I do is I share my truth, and if it rings true for you, then I I would say incorporate it into your belief. But remember that spirituality is always a personal journey, and we each must find our own truth, and not put any one person or any, and I don't mean me, but in any religion, any one person, find our own personal individual pathway. Conversations with God changed your life. How did it change your life, Jenny? Yeah, and that's exactly what we all should be sharing. Absolutely right, Marita. Absolutely right. I have not, it's interesting, Mary. I have not read any Byron Katie. I've heard great things about Byron Katie, and of course, Neil Donald Walsh talks about Byron Katie. But I have not read any Byron Katie stuff, so I'm really curious to dive it down that rabbit hole itself. I am fascinated with a lot of the early metaphysical teachers like Neville Goddard. I find him to be fascinating. Um, and he couches it in a lot of very religious structure, but there's a lot of wisdom in there. You mean the God's Jenny? You mean the God solution when it help you understand your purpose? Mary Meyer, isn't that the perfect example of what I was talking about earlier? The struggle equaling growth. Love what is. Here we go. Do you agree with the concept that in the spiritual world, you spent your time with like minded folks, so evil people are surrounded by other people, and that that's their self inflicted punishment? I don't believe in evil people. John, how can you say that? I'm sure Hitler was evil, wasn't he? Hitler was here having a human experience, and when you cross over to the other side, you have a moment where you experience all the pain, suffering, love, joy, all the emotional concepts that you or constructs that you created in others. You experience it because you're being folded back into the oneness of God. So you have what they call the life review. So the most punishing thing you'll ever experience in your life is experiencing what other people are experiencing that you caused. So if you are someone who is Hitler, you're going to experience all of the suffering he caused individually with each facet of that. So that is the quote unquote punishment. But then that soul is then folded back into the oneness, and is living in the love of God. God is not judgment. God is not punishment. There is no level of hell whereby evil people go. Evil is a belief. There is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. So evil is just a belief. That suffering that each person will experience as they cross over to the other side is a self-inflicted injury, because it's what they created in this world. That's another reason why I say, make sure you love one another. Because when you cross over, you're going to experience whatever you gave people, and if you're loving one another, you're going to experience love as you cross over, and it's a much easier transition per se. See you later, Jenny. It was so good to see you here today. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow night on the membership channel. Will a narcissist care about others' suffering? A narcissist and narcissism and being a psychopath go side by side a lot of times, and they can't care. But that's only in the physical world. When they cross over, they're going to experience everything, as I just said. So a narcissist, a true narcissist, 100% true narcissist, because narcissism, as with all things in life, comes in varying degrees. Some people are slightly narcissistic. Some people are wholly narcissistic. I happen to know a man who is a narcissist and damaged people's lives his entire life. And he doesn't care about anybody else. He doesn't care about anybody else but his own self gratification. And so they'll experience it on the other side. That's what they... Vladimir, I hope that I answered your question. Or at least gave you something to think about, more importantly. I think it's one of those situations where modern religion is really waning. And I know that because I have spoken at many metaphysical centers that are now in churches, because the churches petered out and the metaphysical centers were growing up. And you are quite welcome, Vladimir. And what I find really interesting is that as the metaphysical centers came up, the last people in the church who are giving up the buildings become really vicious. I had one metaphysical center I used to speak at. I think I've told this story before, where they rented the choir loft to the metaphysical center. It was just starting out, and the downstairs was still the main congregation of the building, and the church was downstairs. And as the church congregation dwindled, it got smaller and smaller. And the reason they rented out the upstairs is because they needed to have the rent to keep the church open. And as the church congregation dwindled, because modern religion, organized religion, is almost always based in fear, and people don't like to hang out with fear. People don't like to live in fear. And the metaphysical stuff was all about love and peace and harmony, and so people were gravitating. Well, what happened was those people downstairs who called themselves Christians started putting graffiti on the wall, calling the people upstairs Satan worshipers, and doing horrible things. But we go back to that famous Socrates quote: when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. In other words, as people lose grip on their power, then they fight and they get loud and they start to scream and holler and yell. And when they start calling names and doing all that, it's because they've lost and they're on their way out. And I truly believe religion is on its way out, because people are finding out that they can love. And that was the issue that Jeshua had in the ancient days, is he was talking about being love and having the power within. That didn't sit well with the religions or the governments, because he was saying you don't need Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. You don't need him, right? Often the fear of God is under the love of Jesus. I understand what you're saying. I want to say it more correctly. Often the fear of God is masked by the love of Jesus. And I agree with you, Mary. I totally get what you're saying, totally understand it. I just want to make sure it's said clearly. Jeshua himself, it was a loving, caring individual who was also had his moments of anger and staunchness. And so, don't he was a human man. And people often ask me, John, how come you never talk about the miracles? I don't remember the miracles. I don't have those memories. I'm not saying they didn't happen. I'm just saying I don't have those memories. The only one that I am very sure of is I saw him after the crucifixion with no injuries. And so I know that he did survive the crucifixion, but I also know he did get crucified because I was at the foot of the cross. If you ever hear my regression, you'll hear me experience the crucifixion. And it's important to understand. It's important to understand that we, not one school of thought can encompass the enormity of God, nor the simplicity of God. Because organized religions really are trying to wrap structure around something very, very simple. And as they wrap structure around it, they try to create control around it. And it's very interesting. The Jewish people don't believe that Jeshua was the Messiah, right? The Christians believe that Jesus was the Messiah. The Islam, the Muslims, they don't believe in a Messiah. They believe in prophets, right? And Baha'i believes in prophets. So you've got this transgression. They're all just organized religions, and they're all trying to say that they are the right one, and none of them are, in my opinion. None of them. They all have bits and pieces of beauty in them, but all the bits and pieces are like a puzzle that we have to put together and say, oh, look, it's really just love. It all comes together, all these bits and pieces, and then when we put it all together, it's just the word love. And that really comes down to, your thoughts are creating. When your thoughts can create loving or fearful, your thoughts are creating what you think you become. You create your world. You're the culmination of your thought. As a man thinketh, so is he. These are all bits and pieces found in all of the different spiritual thoughts and religions. And those thoughts mean the same thing. Those thoughts are the joyful essence of God, and that the message of God can be found everywhere. That's why I quote Shakespeare and Yoda, because the same message is in our life every day. And it's just a matter of hearing and listening. Let those who have eyes to see, and those who have ears to hear. That just means that have your eyes and ears open and hear it in your everyday life. And to me, that's the important element, is that we stay in that loving space and realize that if you are giving up all your belief into one religion, then you are giving up the possibility of more. You're giving up the possibility of the enormity of God, right? And my truest belief of mine, number one, is God is love. Number two is that when my eyes are open and I'm looking around this room, I am looking at God. I believe that what I see is the energy that makes up God, that we literally live in God's image. And this image that we're looking at with our eyes is the same energy that our eyes are made of. And so we are experiencing God in our every day, in our every experience. And people don't really, they go on a search and they look for a way to find God. It's not about finding God. It's about acknowledging God is always there. It's about acknowledging that you are one with God and God is within you and you're within God. And every 16 hours you fall asleep and you go back into that space. Don, that is a beautiful, beautiful question. Thank you for putting that out there. I send divine healing to people. I rarely see it manifested. In my experience, healing has to be when two or more are gathered, and one of the two has to be the person who needs the healing. Now, sometimes you can't talk to them directly, but you can talk to them in the higher self. I have done this, and I've experienced amazing healings that people have created. I've witnessed amazing healings that people have taken. But in the Bible, there's a quote where a very brief quote about a town named Beth Shean, and the disciples in the Bible it says they would bypass Beth Shean because no healings could happen there because they knew that he was the son of the carpenter, and they knew the carpenter, and so they couldn't put faith in it. They couldn't put belief in a healing. And so what was happen actually, and this is from memory, what would happen is we would come to Beth Shean. And when I went back as John Davis to Beth Shean, I recognized the place. Now it's all destroyed from an earthquake that hit the place, but it's an archaeological site now. But I recognized the basic topography of the area, which was kind of cool. But there, outside of Beth Shean, there was a dry wash that when they'd have rainstorms, it would become a raging river. But it was typically a dry wash, and we would come to the dry wash, and John and James, the sons of thunder, me and my brother, the Apostle John and his brother, would go into Beth Shean and tell people that if you want a healing, come out to the wash. Jeshua's out there. And the people who believed that they could be healed would come out. And it was the belief that was the huge part of the healing. When I have witnessed people stand up from chairs, wheelchairs, and people receive their hearing, and the healings and healings and healings. It's never about the healer, because I don't believe in healers. I believe in pure love and being one with the person. And as the book of John says, no fear can exist in perfect love. Ailment cannot exist in perfect love either. And you have that perfect love, but they have to be part of the process. They have to be consciously part of the process. Because being here means each one of us is separate, and each one of us has choice and free will. And so if you're sending divine loving energy, healing energy, you really should talk to them and get them understanding that you're doing that, and let them know that you are sending healing and health, and tell them, talk to them about how they should declare, thank you, God, for the healing I am receiving. Amen. And then put it out there, because it's amazing when they are involved, you will see healings. But don't negate what you're doing either, because the loving gesture of being there and being the other one, when two or more are gathered, you get three or more, it's even better. Four or more, it's even better. Five or more, it's even better, because you're resonating that perfect love. But it really does come down to them taking the faith and taking the belief in the healing, because it's their choice. They have a choice to have that free will. I hope that answers your question. When I did my healing workshop a while back, I talked about the idea of how to talk to them about and how to bring them to that place of faith, and that's an interesting experience. And I'm probably not gonna do another one of those workshops again. But if you go on my website, you can get the mini course that's on there, and it has all that information in there. Heaven on earth is of our own making. Yeah, well, exactly. We create our experience. If we want to create something joyful, positive, and loving, then the only way we can do that is to be it, live it. Use our thoughts, words, and our deeds. Now, think about what I just said. Use our thoughts, words, and our deeds. They only live in one moment. You only have them in one moment. You don't have them in the past. You don't have them in the future. You only have them in the I am God moment, the I am moment. Not the I will be, not the I was. You only have thought, word, and deed in the here and now. So you have to take thought, word, and deed and put them towards heaven on earth. Put them towards a joyful, loving world. And when you put those thoughts, words, and deeds into the loving world, you will experience. But think about that thought. What is thought? Belief. That's what thought is. Word. Vocalization of that thought. Belief. Yeah. So I believe it so much I'm saying it out loud. Deed. Acting as if it's happening. Boom. You got it. And hugs to you as well. Can we talk with their soul for the healing? Let me tell you a quick story, Don. I was working at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and I had already come out, and I was already speaking about my spiritual background and my experiences, and I was speaking at the AREs and all those, Association for Research and Enlightenment, the Edgar Cayce Foundations, and so I was very much already in the work, and I was very much doing the work, and I was finishing a comedy sword fighting show at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and as I walked up out of the audience, there was a man there with his girlfriend, and he says, "Hey, John, this is my girlfriend Maria." He says, "She'd like to read your tarot cards." I said, "Okay." Now, the second I saw her, I just clairsentiently knew that something wasn't right, that she was sick. We sat down behind the scene, and the more we're talking, and I said, "Do you mind if I hold your hand?" My mustache itches for some reason. I said, she said, "Sure." So I held her hand. Now she's reading tarot cards. I'm holding her hand. And I literally in my mind said, "Are you ready to let this go?" And then I heard in my mind her say, "Yes, I am." And then I said, "Then pass it to me and I'll pass it on." And I felt this rush of energy to me. And it went right out my crown and just gone, And we finished our tarot reading. It was a fine tarot reading. It wasn't anything earth-shattering, but it was a good tarot reading. Time goes by. Another week goes by. I finish another one of my shows, and I'm walking up the center aisle, and there's the guy without Maria. And he says, "Hey," and he's holding the phone. He says, "Talk to her." I pick up the phone and say, "Hello?" She said, "What did you do to me?" It's Maria on the phone. "What did you do to me?" My response was, "What do you think I did to you?" She said, "I think you healed me." I said, "Then that's what happened." Because I knew it was her belief. What she thought is what mattered. What she thought was most important. "What do you think happened?" "I think you healed me." Then that's what happened. I positive reinforcement. I said, "What did you have?" She says, "I had been given 6 weeks to live. I had cancer all the way through my body, and they can't find cancer in my body anymore." So it wasn't that I was a healer. I consider that situation being a healing facilitator, right? But the healing came with her belief. The healing came with her stepping into the idea of going, "I believe this." And so that's really the key to this. That's really the key to this is realize that you can come there with all the loving, healing intention you want, but they have to come to their own belief about it. And you can talk to them in the higher self. Start out as a thought and listen for an answer. And then you'll probably start getting conversations in your head. It'll be very interesting. So Don, I hope that answers that question for you. It's really kind of the best way I can answer that question from my own personal experience. I do know that when I've done private sessions with other people, I've gotten specific names of people. And let me also share a story. And I'm positive I've told this story before, but there's a point in this story that I want to make. I was reading for someone and I kept hearing the name Mancini. I said, "Mancini." And I was like, okay. And then I knew the first name started with a D, the letter D, and I knew it was a woman. So I said, "Frank," I said, "you know somebody whose last name is Mancini, and it's a woman and her name starts with a D." He goes, "No, it's a man." I said, "No, it's a woman." I believed what I was getting. And then once I just said I believed that, I said, "No, it's a woman." I got her full name. I said, "It's like Dolores Mancini." He said, "Oh my God, it's his mother. We called her Dolly, but her name was Dolores." Dolores Mancini is what I got. But this next piece here is the part that I want to talk about. I told him that Dolores had lost a loved one. And she had been telling everyone how heartbroken she was. And I literally was there to tell her, through Frank, that she needed to stop saying she was heartbroken because she was creating an actual physical ailment of her heart muscle in her body. You know, that thought creating, I am heartbroken, and you grab your heart, right? You grab your chest. I am heartbroken. Right. You are, I am, God's name, heartbroken. It's going to manifest something. You know, so the point of this is what you think you are creating. And sometimes you don't realize what you're thinking. I am heartbroken is literally creating a broken heart. Literally creating a broken heart. So you want to make sure that you're really taking the time to understand what it is you're saying. And I'll tell you something else, Don. When you're dealing with healing, I love the fact that you do this. I think it's beautiful. Take the time to listen to what they're saying about their present moment. Take the time to listen to their belief, because oftentimes their belief will tell you exactly why they're having the issues they are, exactly why they're having the experience they are. And if you can take that moment and go, oh, and put your finger on that moment. Do you believe blank, blank, and say exactly what you think they believe? So in other words, give you an example. Somebody comes to me and says, you know, I'm really trying to get over blah, blah, blah. My next words out of my mouth consistently would be, so you're not. And they go, what? I said, so you're not doing it. But I'm trying. I said, that's right, you're trying. You're not doing it. When you ask God for try, you get try, right? So I listen to everything people say about their present moment, and it gives me a real insight into what their life experience is. Because what you think about your present moment is the experience you're having. So I have heard of Abraham Hicks. Yeah, well, yeah, I believe Abraham Hicks, they are tapping into, Esther is tapping into the information. Now, the interesting thing about Abraham Hicks and other mediums who bring through entities like that, I had an experience years ago where I was doing healing work and had a entity come through, and I ended up channeling that entity. I'm doing using quotes. Ended up channeling that entity for about a year, and towards the end of that year, he stopped referring to me in third person, and started to refer to both of us as one. As it would say, John I, John I, John I, and somebody asked, "Why are you referring to John with John I?" And it was explained to me that when someone is a channel and they're bringing through a personality like that, it's not about the personality. It's about their own belief that they are not worthy of the information, or they can't bring that information down. And what we were told in that session was that I was getting more and more comfortable with just allowing straight information from the oneness of God come through, and I no longer needed the entity as a filter that allowed it to be separate from myself. So, in other words, I was creating the entity of Gabriel, who was which I think was an archaic way of saying Gabriel. I was using that entity of Gabriel as something, so I myself wasn't the vessel. So because I couldn't wrap my own self-worth issues, my own self-doubt issues around the idea that I was getting information. And after a brief time of John I, I just started channeling information without the entity, without the other personality. And next thing you know, it was just me talking. That's why when you see videos of me doing the I opened up and asked videos, that's me channeling. That's me opening up, and just whatever comes through comes through. But it's not using a separate entity or a separate personality to bring the information through. It's just me opening up and bringing the information through and allowing it to flow. You'll notice when I do those videos, I speak really, really fast because the information is just pouring through, right? I'm getting rid of the filters. And I truly believe that the Abraham Hicks are bringing through beautiful information. But I also think it's very much filtered through her own beliefs and through her own doubts about being the open channel herself. And that's not to disparage her in any way, shape, or form. Everyone has their process. But for me, I was literally told that it was the personalities and the entities were not necessary because we're all one. And that oneness can come through you and me and the guy sitting on the corner. And oftentimes, if you take the time to sit and talk to the guy in the corner, the information will come from the guy in the corner as well. And sometimes he doesn't know he's giving you the information. But words come out all the time. Have you ever been driving down the road and suddenly the song on the radio lyric hits you? That's channeling the oneness of God through song. God talks to us all the time. And that's my thought on that. But yeah, I think that there's been a lot of Abraham. I can't actually watch her videos any longer because it seems, it's like I see good information in there, but it seems removed. It seems kind of removed. It's like, it seems like it's one step away. And I really feel that it's much closer to all of us. But I will say Abraham Hicks was influential in a lot of people finding their way to spirituality. So I think that's beautiful. Time for a coffee drink. We are one. What are your thoughts on synchronicities? It's an interesting question because I've had synchronicities in my life, but the synchronicities that happen in my life usually happen because of some belief, either conscious or subconscious, that I have. For instance, back in the days of the early days of me first finding out about my past life stuff, I had the whole 444 experience. I read the book, The Messengers, and he had a whole 444 thing, and I started seeing 444s everywhere. And you would think it's like a synchronicity because like I walked into a Best Buy store and past the area where the appliances were, and all of the appliances were blinking, and all of them said 444. And to me, that's just a synchronicity, right? But I create my experience. I'll tell you, one of the one of the interesting moments of my life with the 444. Somebody said, "Well, why don't you just use it to win the lottery?" I said, "All right." So I said, "I will," and I went down to the corner store and I got the pick 3. I got 444. You know what happened? I did not win. But the day that I picked 444, the pick 4 that day was 4444. Right? So I'm focused on 4s, but I chose the 3. So, but it was obvious 4444 was the one that hit that exact day that I told somebody I was going to go do it. It made me laugh. I was like, well, that was my own vanity in that regard. But anyway, so, well, we've kind of gone a little long here. So let's do 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll call it a day, if that's all right with you guys. Any more questions? Just throw them out, and then we'll kick them out and get out of here. By the way, I will say, if you are interested, the Monday night, you have to join the membership group, but the Monday night sessions have been wonderful. We literally have just been sitting there talking and experiencing and sharing, and we've got a guy in there who's an expert on the channeled law of one material, and he's just a lovely individual. So if anybody's interested, just go to my website and look up the membership and see if you're interested or not. And doesn't look like we're getting any more questions. However, so if that is the case, my friends, I think we're going to just call it a day. I'm going to go finish my coffee and hang out with my son for a little while. So you guys, oh, good. I'm glad, David. I'm glad that helps. I'm glad that helps. And love and light to you as well, Marvita. Okay. All right. So I'm going to send us out of here. Everyone have a great day. And, great, Vladimir. We'll see you then. All right. I'm going to close this puppy out. Thank you for joining us at the Live Loving live stream. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and visit us at johnofnew.com.